When it is not obvious what service an animal provides, only limited inquiries are allowed. Staff may ask 2 questions. Number 1, is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? Is that service animal required because of a disability? Hello, ma'am. Nice to meet you. Is that service dog required because of a disability? That is the first question. When it is not obvious, so when it is obvious, when you have somebody who is blind, for example, when it is obvious what a service animal provides, if you see somebody that is blind with a dog, that is within our definition of obvious. Okay? So, not to be rude, but don't get stupid about what obvious in general and those kinds of things are. Laws are written with language that we use so that we can understand them. When it is not obvious what service an animal provides, only limited inquiries are allowed. Staff may ask 2 questions. Number 1, is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And the second question, what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? That is a legal question allowed by the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is not asking me what my specific disability is. It is asking one of the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is that animal, that dog, is specifically trained for a task related to my disability, related to its handler's disability. So the question, what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? One of the tasks that my dog has been trained to perform is that when I am getting dizzy, she immediately goes in front of me and blocks to do 2 things. Number 1, to inform me that I am getting dizzy. That is usually, when she does that, it is usually after I have not listened to her, when she has taken her nose and touched my hand to let me know that something different is going on with regard to my specific disability. She is also trained to get in front of me so that if I am going to faint or as I'm getting dizzy, I have the ability to have a more comfortable fall, unfortunately, on her versus on the ground. The 2 questions that staff is allowed to ask. Number 1, is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And number 2, what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? This is not an exhaustive list. The handler only needs to give 1 or 2 examples of exactly what that dog was individually trained to do for that handler related to that handler's federally enumerated disability with regard to the Americans with Disabilities Act. Staff cannot ask about the person's disability. They cannot require medical documentation, and that includes any type of tag for the dog. It is outside of the requirements of the law to require any paperwork for that dog with regard to the Americans with Disabilities Act. Staff cannot ask about the person's disability. They cannot require medical documentation. I am not required to walk around with my medical records because you do not understand the Americans with Disabilities Act. Staff cannot ask about the person's disability. You cannot require medical documentation. You cannot require a special identification card or training documentation for the dog, and you cannot ask that the dog demonstrate its ability to perform the work or task. And the reason you cannot ask that the dog be required to perform the work or task is because that would untrain the dog. Think about it. If my dog is trained to step in front of me when I get dizzy in a specific way and take certain actions with regard to my disability, if you, as a staff member of a commercial enterprise, want to know what that training is, you cannot ask for that training, because you will be asking for that dog to do an action outside of their training, which will in essence mess with their training, because you are having them do a task that is not related to my disability, and therefore I am not required to make that happen for you. The dog is specifically trained for me, and the dog is legally entitled to all the benefits of a federal service animal when they are acting in accordance with their individualized training related to my disability. So if you want to see them do a task, it cannot be, I do not have to show you, because you would be untraining my dog. Does that make sense? Allergies and fear of dogs are not valid reasons for denying access or refusing service to people using service animals. Let's say that again. Allergies and fear of dogs. So somebody else's allergy, somebody else's fear of dogs do not override the law provided to me by the Americans with Disabilities Act regarding my service dog. Allergies and fear of dogs are not valid reasons for denying access or refusing service to people using service animals. When a person who is allergic to dog dander and a person who uses a service animal must spend time in the same room or facility, for example, in a school classroom or a homeless shelter, they both should be accommodated by assigning them, if possible, to different locations within the room or different rooms in the facility. A person with a disability cannot be asked to remove his service animal from the premises unless, number one, the dog is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it. Let's just stop there, right? If my dog is out of control, it's not a federal service dog, right? It's not a federal service dog. If my dog is out of control, it is not within my control, which means it is not covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if the dog is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, or two, the dog is not housebroken. So the easiest way, completely clear way for any commercial entity to know when a dog is not allowed in that facility, is not under the purview of the Americans with Disabilities Act, is if that dog pees or poops. A dog that is not housebroken is not and can never be during the non-housebroken time be a federal service dog. Any dog that is not housebroken is not a service dog. Say we go to a restaurant and the dog pees. Anybody in that restaurant can ask me to leave, to take that dog out. That dog is not protected I am not protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act if that dog goes to the bathroom inside the premises as not being housebroken, because a non-housebroken dog can never be an Americans with Disabilities federal service dog. It's as simple as that. When there is a legitimate reason to ask that a service animal be removed, staff must offer the person with the disability the opportunity to obtain goods or services without the animal's presence. So let's say that again. When there is a legitimate reason to ask that a service animal be removed. So let's really clear, this isn't correct wording. When there is a legitimate reason to ask that an animal be removed because it is proven that it is not a federal service dog, that does not automatically mean that the human being cannot be served, right? Staff can still allow the human the opportunity to buy the services without the service dog. So say, for example, I go to the grocery store and say, for example, Georgia is sick. And when we're at the grocery store, she pees or poops. She is not a service dog. I don't care that she's been individually trained for me. I don't care that I need her there. I don't care that I fit within the enumerated list of disabilities according to the Americans with Disabilities Act that allows me to have a service dog. I don't care that she was individually trained. When she is not housebroken, say she's sick and so therefore she's not housebroken, she does not, she is a pet. She is no longer a service dog for that area. So she can be forced to leave the premises, just like other dogs are not, just like people in commercial entities don't have to allow other dogs to be there. She has to leave. The commercial entity, the grocery store, can still allow me to make purchases even though she's outside. Does that make sense? But just because she, say, peed or pooped at the grocery store because she was sick one day does not mean that when she's no longer sick, she's a service dog again.